Talk a lot about property cycles around the country, and when you read the newspaper, we say, or they say, the property market is booming. Well, it needs an S on the end of it because there are a number or hundreds of property markets around the country. So we need to get an understanding of what those markets are, and then indeed where they are in the property cycle. So firstly, I'm going to explain the property cycle and how it works, and then get an understanding of where different areas are in the property cycle and indeed property types. So, normal clock, 12 o'clock is traditionally boom. Top of the market, right? Peak of the market. It's not going any higher for the moment. After that, we have some sort of readjustment and maybe a flattening period. After that, we see some growth coming through, and then momentum builds and everyone knows about it, and we get in and it's a hot market, okay? That period there, the unknown is how high it's going to go in this particular cycle, okay? Now, most markets around the country do not go on forever. They do not continue booming. They'll readjust for a period of time until that becomes the norm, and then rents will catch up, and then you'll see, okay, buying in this area is actually now affordable again because we might have had some household income increases, etc., right? So the journey continues around and around again. That's been doing that for the last 100 years. Now, there are suburbs around the country that just have this nice consistent growth about them, right? They don't go crazy, but they don't really back off either. So places like Bondi in Sydney is a good example of that. Whether that be units or houses doesn't really matter. We just see that nice consistent growth because it's blue chip and desirable area to live in, okay? Whether you can afford that is another question. So, in the last couple of years, we've seen most areas, or definitely in the last 12 months, most areas have been in this hot phase where there is actually more demand than there is supply. There's more demand than there is supply. So when we've got that, what that does is put pressure on house prices. So something's there for 550,000, it ends up going for 600,000 because we've got 15 bidders out there that are prepared to pay a little bit more. Cash rates are low, they can afford the repayments, etc. A little bit of emotion gets caught up there and as well, because there's a lot of owner-occupiers that buy property, and they're the most common type of buyers, right? Now let's talk about the houses versus units. So whilst housing has been at a hot pace in the last 12 months, units haven't been the same. And again, that comes back to that supply and demand, right? You have more supply of units in particular areas and not as much demand. Traditionally, 1-2 bedroom units are reserved for singles or couples, or maybe a couple with a small child, right? Houses are open to all those, plus larger families, downsizes, upsizes, etc., right? So looking at the supply and demand and looking at the region in which you're buying in is really critical, but also the type of property that you're buying, especially if you're an investor. You're not living in it, so there's no emotion tied to that. You can choose, you can pick and choose wherever you want around the country for your price point, and you can choose the type of property that you need. Okay, so it's really important to factor in everything and not just having a look at a property clock in a newspaper and saying, well, this is where I think it's at, now I'm going to go in and buy. So the interesting part of all of this is, if we've seen majority of properties or suburbs around the country in this hot phase in 2021, what's happening in 2022? So I think we've got to be really strategic in our thinking. Not all those properties are going to continue. Not all those areas are going to continue through this boom phase. Some of them will readjust. Some of them will flatten out. Some of them will continue to grow. And we've got to look much deeper into those areas to see which are the ones that are going to grow. It's going to be those ones with continued demand. It's going to be those with more population coming into the area and less stock coming onto the market. So we've got that supply and demand crunch. All right, so don't just go out there and buy anything in 2022. Property is the flavour of the month or the year, but we've got to be really strategic in our thinking.